With this example, we're going to take our readings, benchmark value, and fill it into the levels booking sheet. The first move we're going to do is to take the benchmark or the reduced level at our starting point, the 37.572, and fill it in on the first row of our booking sheet under the reduced level column. With that, we can fill in under the remark columns beside it, benchmark or datum, because that at this point we know what the height or the level actually is. With the measuring staff at the same location, we use the level at station 1 to record the height as measured on the measuring staff. In this case, it is a value of 0.926. It is the first reading taken when the instrument, the level, is at station 1. The reading, 0.926, is therefore a backside reading. It is entered in on the first row under the backside column. The next reading that is taken is at station or point A. So we can fill in under remarks, point A or point A. The reading taken at that point is 0.584. It is an intermediate reading. It's not the last reading taken at station 1. Taking a new row for this reading, it's an intermediate, station A, then the 0.584 is entered in under the intermediate site column. Next readings taken at point B, and at point B, the value recorded on the measuring staff is 1.056. It is also an intermediate reading and is entered in under the IS column for row B, or the third row. Next reading is taken is at point C, so taking a new row under remarks, point C. The value that is read from the measuring staff, 1.634, is an intermediate reading and is entered in under the IS column. Next point is point D. The reading that is taken at point D is 0.998. This reading is the last reading taken when the level is at station 1. The last reading is therefore goes under the foresight column, 0.998. The level is then moved from station 1 to station 2 to allow the next set of readings to be measured. With the measuring staff still at point D, a secondary reading is taken at point D, and the reading of 1.349 is the first reading taken when the level is at station 2. And here on row 5, that first reading at station 2 goes on the same row, row number 5, but under the backside reading 1.349. Now the process is allowed to be repeated, taking subsequent readings at point E, new row for the reading at point E, the value taken 2.598. It is an intermediate reading and is entered in under the IS column. Next reading taken is at point F. Its value is 3.112. It is also an intermediate reading. Next value that is read is at point G. The value that is read at that point is 4.064. It is also an intermediate reading and is entered in under the IS column. Then finally, point H. This is the last reading taken when the level is at station 2. Its value is 0.828. The last reading taken at a station is a foresight reading, and that value is entered under the foresight column on this particular row. The level is now moved from station 2 to station 3 to allow the next set of readings to occur. The first reading we take at station H is a value of 2.882. It is a backside reading and is entered in under the backside column on row 9 that corresponds to point H. After point H, next point that is recorded is at point I. Its value is 2.204. It is an intermediate reading, so goes under the IS column. Next reading is J. It is again another intermediate reading, 1.615. Next reading, point K. Value is 2.108, again another intermediate. Next row for point L, again another intermediate reading, 2.439. Next point, point M. Its reading is also an intermediate reading, 2.617. Next one, point N. It is also an intermediate reading, 2.056. Next reading is point O. Again, it is also an intermediate reading, 1.745. After O is point P. This is the last reading taken when the instrument is at station 3. So this value, 2.022, will be a foresight reading and will go under the foresight column, 2.022. The instrument is then moved from station 3 to station 4. A double reading is taken at point P to be able to relate the next set of readings to those that have occurred previously. At station P, a backside reading is taken. It's the first reading at that station 4. It has a value of 0.589. And finally, we have one more reading taken at point Q. At point Q, this is the last reading taken at station 4. We only have 2 readings. So there are no intermediate readings at station 4. The value of 4.071 goes then directly under the foresight column. And that is all the values booked correctly into our table. Once the values or staff readings have been entered in to our booking sheet under the backside, intermediate and foresight columns, our next move is to calculate the rise and fall between subsequent readings. To do this, we take a pair of readings, one after another, work out the absolute difference, and if the second of the 2 readings is smaller than the preceding one, that represents a rise, then the absolute difference is entered under the rise column. If the second reading is larger than the preceding one, that represents a fall, then the absolute difference is entered in under the fall column. So to demonstrate how this works, we take our first and second readings, 0.926, 0.584, work out the absolute difference between our 2 consecutive readings. There are no minus signs involved. The difference is 0.342. The second of the 2 readings is smaller than the preceding one. Therefore, our absolute difference is entered in under the rise column. Now, comparing the next 2 readings, 0.584 and the reading afterwards, work out the absolute difference. The second reading is larger than the preceding reading. That represents a fall. That absolute difference is then entered in under the fall column. Next 2 readings, 1.056 and 1.634, work out the absolute difference. The second reading is larger than the preceding reading. The absolute difference is entered in under the fall column. Then the next pair of readings I was taking, 1.634, 0.998, work out the absolute difference. The second of the 2 readings is smaller than the preceding reading. That represents a rise. Our absolute difference is entered in under the rise column. Now a change station has occurred. The instrument is moved from station 1 to station 2. Therefore, we now reset our reading for point D. So our first reading is now taken as 1.349. Then the reading taken after that is 2.589. We work out the absolute difference between these 2 readings and comparing the second of the 2 readings to the first. Here the 2.589 is greater than the 1.349. Work out the absolute difference. Second reading is larger, therefore that represents a fall. The absolute difference is entered in under the fall column. Repeating with the next two readings. Work out the difference. Second reading is larger than the preceding reading. Our absolute difference then goes in under the fall column. Next two readings. Work out the absolute difference. Second reading is larger than the preceding reading. Again, under the fall column. Next pair of readings. Work out the absolute difference. Second reading is smaller than the preceding reading. Therefore, our absolute difference goes under the rise column. Again, a change station has occurred. So we reset our current reading and work out the absolute difference between 2.882 and 2.204. Second reading is smaller than the preceding reading. That represents a rise. The absolute difference goes under the rise column. And repeat again. Next two readings, work out the difference. Second one is smaller, therefore that represents a rise. Next two readings, work out the difference. Second one is larger, therefore that represents a fall. Next two readings, work out the difference. Second one is larger than the preceding one. That represents a fall. Next two readings. Next two readings. Work out the difference. Second reading is larger than the preceding reading. That represents a fall. Next two readings, work out the difference. Second one is smaller than the preceding reading, so that represents a rise. Next pair of readings, work out the absolute difference. Second reading is smaller than the preceding reading. That represents a rise. Then the next pair of readings, work out the difference. Second reading is larger than the preceding reading. Therefore, that will be a fall. Another change station has occurred. We reset our reading at point P. So we now take 0.589, and the reading after that was the 4.071. We'll work out the difference between these two. The second reading is larger than the preceding reading. Our absolute difference then goes in under the fall column. The last column to complete is our reduced level column, and we take our first reduced level and look on the next row whether we have a rise or fall value, and to our current reduced level, if we have a rise value we would add it on, or conversely if we have a fall value we would subtract it. In this case, we have a rise value, so our value of 0.342 gets added to our 37.572 to to give us 37.914. Now with this reduced level, we now have a fall, so we subtract off 0.472 to give us 37.442. The next row, we have another fall, so we take off 0.578 from our current reduced level to give us a value of 36.864. Next row, we have a rise, so we add on to our current reduced level a value of 0.636, 37.500. Next, fall value. So we would subtract that from our current reduced level, 36.260. Next one is another fall, so we'd subtract that off, 35.737. Next row, another fall value, so we subtract that off again, 34.785. Next value is a rise, so we add that on to our current reduced level, 38.021. Next one is another rise, add that to our current reduced level, 38.699. Next row, another rise value added on, 39.288. Next one is a fall, subtract that off, 38.795. Next row, 0.331, subtract it off, 38.464. Next one, another fall, subtract it off, 38.268. Next row is another rise, so we add that to our current reduced level, 38.849. And next one is another rise, add that on, 39.158. Next one is a fall, subtract that off, that gives us 38.881. And finally, one further fall, subtract that from our current reduced level, gives us a value of 35.399. Now that we have completed our booking sheet, we've entered in our values, backside, intermediate side, foreside, used that to calculate our rise and fall, and then from our first reduced level, we're able to use the rise and fall values to work out the reduced level at each of the points, A through Q. At this point, it's very easy to have made a mathematical error. So at the bottom of our booking sheet, we have 3 checks that we can do to verify our calculations. To verify our calculations have been processed correctly. So here, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take all our backside readings, add them all up, and if you add them all up, you'll get a value of 5.746. Similarly, we're going to add up all our foresight readings. If we total up all our foresight, we get 7.919. Beneath that, you'll see if you take your sum of the backsight readings, take off the sum of the foresight readings, you get a value of minus 2.173. Next one, we're going to add up all our rise values. Doing that, you'll get a value of 6.353. Add up all our fall values. We get a total of 8.526. The sum of the rise minus the sum of the fall also gives us minus 2.173. Finally, from the reduced level column, we're going to take our last reading we have, and from that we're going to subtract the very first reduced level, working out the difference of 35.399 minus 37.572 gives us a difference of minus 2.173. Because our three numerical checks are the same, that means that we've processed our table correctly.